All right, I'll call to order this meeting of the Housing, Health, and Public Safety Committee. If Mr. Gabbard shows up, we'll let him jump in any point that we're at.
Sounds great.
On the agenda tonight, we've got discussion regarding Airbnb, discussion with the building department, discussion regarding group homes, halfway houses, sober living houses, and the chronic nuisance task force meet and greet, expectations, and any question and answer portion. As far as the Airbnb, I reached out to Keith Moore, who sent me an email back saying that we can expand the hotel tax definition to include them, or we can outright forbid them. However, we'd have to go through another process to prohibit that within residential zone. As far as rules and regulations for them, I guess he said that we would have to come up with them as far as what we would allow and not allow, I guess. I don't know anything about Airbnb. I was hoping you might have a little insight on it.
Oh, sorry. My fault. Yeah. I mean, I would just say that, I mean, I know that there are Airbnbs that kind of exist in the city, and I think many of them exist peacefully. I don't know what brought up the specific discussion, though.
I don't know. I know it was an email sent around saying that it was put in this committee. I don't remember it being put in this committee, but...
Oh, okay, gotcha, okay. So I don't remember that discussion either. I mean, I would say that the potential tax revenue from this, I mean, I can't imagine there's more than 15 or 20 at the most in the city, and I think a lot of them are actually people renting out rooms in their house, like for a little bit of extra income. I know that my wife and I did that for, I don't know, about a year when we lived on Mills, and I mean, it was I can't imagine all of our neighbors knew, and everybody was totally fine. There was no disruption whatsoever. And I think there's other Airbnbs in the city that's similar where people will do that. We haven't rented out an Airbnb though in probably 3 or 4 years. I mean, we just did it for a year before we had a baby. So
would it be okay for us to just kind of expand that hotel tax definition?
I mean, I would just, I don't know. It depends on if you're expecting the person that's hosting the Airbnb to collect the tax or if you're expecting the platform to do it. I mean, like I said, to me, it just seems like such a small amount of, I think we might want to first see, before we even worry about legislation, at what potential revenue there could be. And again, I don't have any intention of hosting an Airbnb myself for any time. So it's just that, I mean, if we're going to get $3,000 a year from it or something like that, I mean, is it worth the effort to do it? Potentially not. I don't know.
Okay. I'll shoot another email out to Mr. Moore and see if he can give me any additional other than the 4 lines that he sent me.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds great.
All right. If I could have the representative from the building department step forward, please.
Are we on the second item now?
We are. We'll move on to the second item, discussion with the building department.
Okay, great.
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing. So I have a few questions. I don't know if these two have any questions. I know I've been getting contacted a lot by residents regarding issues that are going on. And I think one of them has been an ongoing issue for several years now without any help from the building department, and I haven't been able to get any help from the building department either. I've tried to call up there several times, have been put on hold or not answered at all. But what I'm trying to figure out is how you determine that a deck or a entryway set of stairs would be determined grandfathered in. Because if you don't have a permit to know that those were permitted to even be built in the first place, how can it be grandfathered in?
Anything that's a while back ago, even handrails going up, we always grandfather in. If it's a new build, it's not like that no more. You gotta build it to.
Right, I understand that, but if you don't have any records to show when it was built, then how can it be grandfathered in? grandfather clause has a time limit on it, so many years.
That's something Mark will have to, Mark was doing, I know what you're talking about. And we have been there tons of time. It's not like we haven't.
I mean,
What are we talking about? That
so
might
if
be
you look at this picture, you can see that a set of stairs is encroaching the neighbor's property. It's actually on the neighbor's property.
Okay.
So one thing with these is that when I went and looked at it, several beams are rotted out. Several support beams are rotted out. There's a couple on the bottom that seem to be falling off of the temporary foundation, I guess, up here. And, you know, it's obviously about 3 feet over under the neighbor's property.
It's not 3 feet. We measured everything.
Okay, well,
Yeah. I mean,
it may
we've been out
not,
there.
it may not be
It's
3
been-
feet, but it's still encroaching on that property.
Yeah, it's
So the
Just a little
setback,
bit, I know
the
that.
setback limit on it is obviously broken here. So how, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how, or understand how something can be grandfathered in if there's not a time frame that it was even put in. At this point, it should just be tell the owner, hey, you got to take it down, resubmit permits. If it doesn't fit setback, then you got to figure something else out.
I really don't know how to, I mean, this was done way before I started there. Mr. Gadder's been out there. We had people out there. Mark was dealing with them at first. So, and it's been a while since we've been out there because they haven't called.
Well, they stopped calling because they weren't getting any help. And
That's,
I'm not saying it's your fault.
No.
It might be Mr. Reeves' fault, I don't know.
it's,
But they were saying that they weren't getting any help. That's the issue.
they went to, I don't know how many, when they didn't like the answer, they went to somebody else, and that's what they probably did.
I mean, they're looking for an answer other than it's grandfathered in. That's an easy answer that I can answer.
I might be the only one here, but I'm really confused on what we're talking about. Like, I have no
What is
idea
it?
what
Is that property on
situation this
Regent?
is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah.
What's it? What building is this?
It's a
It's
house
on
on
the
Reed.
3700 block of Regent, I think.
So
And
what I'm kind of
essentially-
understanding is they're looking for the building department to tell to take it down. So that's over. Wouldn't that be a matter of maybe just getting it surveyed, having an official
they-
survey of the property, which they do?
Here's the
okay.
survey right here that
Maybe
was done in
file a civil-
2019.
But wouldn't they maybe just file a civil suit?
Yeah, I would think that they're going to, at this point, they're going to need to go to court.
So
Well, and they
I don't think,
spoke-
I mean, I know like we have a building department, they say kind of what you can build, can't build, but, I mean, it seems like Mr. Roble here is kind of confused himself by when this was built and all that. Maybe it's just up to the owner that has this property currently to go file a civil suit, have it court ordered that they need to remove these stairs, and then they'll oversee the construction of the new stairs.
Well, and
That
here's the
seems like-
issue, is that they're going to be paying more for the civil suit than
Yeah.
what it would cost to have that just taken down.
But we can't.
Something that our city
I mean,
leaders can sit there and say,
Is it in
you
our-
don't have a permit for it, take it down.
But is it in our legislature currently right now that they have total say, this is on the property, they can tell you to take it down? Is that an ask, or is that something we're asking them that they have the power to do? They can't go over there, be the Gestapo and kick their doors in and
Well,
rip it down themselves, like,
That's what my question was the building department, I don't know who it was, has sent a letter saying that it's grandfathered in. But again, a grandfather, you need to have a time frame.
I mean, it doesn't
I would
matter if
say
something's
that I would
grandfathered or
actually-
not, if it's on your property, it's on your property, so they need to file a civil suit, sounds like. And then from there, have a court order saying, take it down, and then they'll do their job as the building department of overseeing the new construction is what, that's just, I'm not in this, I don't know what's going on here fully, but to me, that just sounds more streamlined and like the process.
Yeah, and we should be very careful on this whole grandfather thing because, I mean, if we're saying that the building department doesn't have a record, that all of a sudden it's not grandfathered in, well, somebody could just accidentally or
Yeah.
just, purposely lose a record and now the homeowner
Yeah.
has no, like, rights there, so.
I mean, this seems like a civil, like when I was getting my fence redone, like my neighbors, yeah, they're like, hey, yeah, you know, it's okay if it's a little bit this way, that
I mean,
way, but the next people that move in might not.
And I do
They'd
feel
have to
for
take
them.
it to court. and
This is
have
a
to take it
it's a
down.
very difficult property because this stairwell goes up, from my recollection talking to them, the stairwell goes up to a second floor apartment. This is the only stairwell entrance, I
Yeah.
think, to in front. There could be one in the back, but I think this is the only one. So, essentially there's going to have to be a coordinating effort if they do get that court order to whatever. Although I will say, I would be curious, I mean, I think I've asked, I don't remember if I asked the fire chief at the time, but the previous fire chief, but I remember this coming up before, and I agree, I was kind of frustrated too at just the lack of answers that there were, but just from, yeah, I mean, I would think if I were in their person's shoes, I would do exactly what Mr. Kelch suggested and try to look into just filing a civil suit on this, because I don't know if the city would even have the authority to order them to tear it down just because it's on encroaches on a neighboring property. There could have been some agreement from years past that they had, the city may not be privy to. So, I mean, I'm sure there probably weren't, but I just don't know. I don't know if the city has that authority to tell somebody that just because of that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, how grandfathering is. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's up to the city to prove that it's, like, basically have the records to show that it's not, or I mean, I would think anything that's pre-existing would somehow be grandfathered unless the city.
I don't want one department using the word grandfathered in, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't feel like doing this work. Yeah, it's grandfathered in.
Yeah, I doubt that. I mean, I doubt that's what's happening. I mean, if the thing's falling down, I mean, maybe we should figure out, like, what would other cities do in this scenario? I mean, I don't know if you want to call around to other cities and see if you have a stairwell that's not even talking about where it is on the property, but just if it's in that terrible condition. Maybe we need an ordinance or something talking about stairwells. I mean, I don't know.
I'm just concerned with the people also that live there in that building too, because if we got, I don't know, how big is that? Maybe 10 people standing on there. I'm sure you can fit 10 skinny people on there. How long is that going to hold out before it falls down?
Yeah, I don't think the whole being where it is on the property or whatever is our kind of ballpark. I think if it's unsafe, then maybe that's something we say, hey, it's unsafe.
Well,
I think that's in our purview.
It just brings it all together. It's unsafe. It's not. It doesn't meet setback requirements, and I know people that have been extremely strict. I know there's been people that have been strict on the setback requirement, meaning they were a couple inches off of that setback and told to redo the entire project.
Well, let me ask Ms. Rowe this then. Have you viewed the staircase?
Please,
Have you had a chance to view the staircase?
not for a while.
So is it
We went through a whole
possible
winter.
for us to ask you or the building department, somebody there, to go maybe check this staircase out and kind of see how it is, the condition, the setback requirements, stuff like that, maybe submit something there?
Check out the stairs and see if the wood and everything.
Yeah. I think that's about as lengthy as we can get into that, I think.
And that's fine. I'm just kind of concerned that, that the answer of it's grandfathered in just isn't enough. That's the only concern I really had was, let's get a better answer. Let's get something that's actually substantial.
This thing was built way before the guy who bought it, because I've looked back on Google and all that, and it's in the 90s when this thing, and could have been could have been later than that. But that's what we do, it's grandfathered in. We don't use that every time, man. We don't do that.
Okay.
We don't do that at all.
Well, I would strongly ask that somebody go take a look at it, because I did see certain areas, especially up along the porch area, where the beams are rotted through and everything, and there's support lag bolts that are rusted, that I'm quite concerned with the safety on it, to be honest. I mean, there's a leg on the bottom pier that's falling off. I'm not just concerned with the neighbors that's on the property of, but also the residents that are going to be living there, especially if they're college kids. I think it needs to be looked at a little bit harder and move a little bit on this landlord to take care of his property. But I appreciate all the work.
I will certainly agree with that.
I know you guys are getting ready to go out and do your walks. All right, so we'll conclude that one.
Thank you, Mr. Roble.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here.
Moving on to, and I guess this one will be a quick one too, discussion of group homes and halfway houses, also sober living houses, because I went out and met with somebody on Lindley Avenue who's dealing with a halfway house right now. It's a 4-bedroom, single family, and the 4 days that I sat outside watching, I saw at least 9 people in there. I didn't stay all night, obviously. I didn't want the police coming out and, asking me who I was and what I was doing. But, if we've got somewhere 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in a house where we're only supposed to have 4.
And we're talking about just adults, right?
Just adults. I sat there and I watched them utilizing drugs. One had alcohol out on the street, and for it to be a sober house, it doesn't seem so sober. It also seemed like a rotating door because the same people weren't there 2 days after when I went back. It was a whole separate group of people. So when I contacted the law department, I really didn't get anything out of them. I basically got the brush off from them. So I guess we really don't have anything to discuss on that as far as sober houses, because I was hoping to get a better answer out of the law department than what I got.
Well, we do have ordinance in play already that kind of limits the number of adults that can be on property, right?
It does, but it has to be enforced.
Yeah, and that's, I think it was the law director said something like that's kind of hard to prove kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
I mean...
So what does our next steps look like for this to try to limit? Are we trying to limit the number of halfway houses?
I would like to.
Don't want any?
I would like to limit the number of halfway houses, or I don't know if it's discriminatory to even prohibit it.
I myself, I'm not for having those here locally, because we have to look at it this way. Our job is not, at the local level, not to combat drug use. Okay? That's not what our job here at this table is. And I had the privilege myself, personally, before I won the election, to sit in on a meeting where a gentleman from California came and wanted to open a sober living facility, a rehab facility in Norwood. One of my main questions, my first question was, how does this help Norwood as a city? He said it don't. He said, if you live in Norwood and you have a drug problem, you got to go to rehab or an in-home facility, you're not going to go to one or want to go to one, be beneficial. That's going to be right in your backyard, in your neighborhood, wherever you're from. You want to go somewhere a little further away where you don't know people. You're not just going to give into those vices that you have because, you go right down the street to old Larry and he hooks you up. So we'd be having, and he explained this to me step by step, he explained that we'd be having people from other cities and communities kind of surrounding the tri-state area coming into our city to use that facility, and it would not be benefiting our residents. So in my opinion, we're here to think objectively to benefit Norwood, and this is something that just doesn't benefit Norwood, so it's not something I'm really for. So if we want to go the route where we want to try to come up with an ordinance to not allow them or disallow them, I'm on board with that.
What I'll do is I'll take a look and see if there's anything that we can do as far as that pathway, and then continue talking with Keith to see if we can get something on the books to attempt to prevent it. I know that this house has been an absolute nightmare for the neighbors living around there. And I feel bad for them because some of them have lived there for 40 and 50 years, and now they have to deal with this. So
regarding this, there is a chapter on the books already on boarding homes. It's chapter 1705 in our codified ordinances. I don't know, this was passed, it looks like, in 2006, so I don't know exactly when. Has there potentially been any court rulings that might invalidate this? What have you? It sounds. I don't think we have used it.
I was getting ready to research it before this meeting, and it's taking me a little time to research it. So
yeah, I know you're a busy person. But long story short is, I think we should look at. I think we should probably look at what we have on the books today. So maybe potentially we can set it up at the next meeting, we'll get copies of it to everybody. I didn't actually know it's on the books until just, not an expert on everything in the code, but I did some Googling, found it. And I think we should see what's on the books today and just see if there are anybody that's registered today as a boarding home, and
Yeah, see, I
kinda
know
go
this
from
house
there.
isn't even registered as a rental.
I mean, the only one I know of and that I'm okay with is, it's been here for years and they serve a good mission, is the Salvation Army. That's the only one, so if there is something on the books, I know that they have to allow something because they're there. So maybe we look at amending it to make it fit our needs that we have as a city. So I agree with that, James.
All right. Anything else? Good to move on? All right. Moving on, Chronic Nuisance Task Force. Anybody here for the Chronic Nuisance Task Force? There is a packet up here on the podium if you'd like to have it. We're going to go through that packet here during this meet, I guess. All right. Expectations and goals for ordinance 567. This ordinance is a way to bring multiple departments and ordinances under one umbrella. The reason that we created this, the reason that Chris worked so hard on this was so that everybody else wouldn't have to work so hard. This essentially allows departments to work together as one unit and cite under one ordinance versus 5 for health, or 3 for building, and 3 for police, and, you know, it brings everybody together under one umbrella. So you only have to cite under the one ordinance versus your 3 or 4, 5 or 6. And essentially, how this was born was that Chris and I both, at the same time, almost a year ago, were getting complaints regarding debris and overgrown vegetation, along with multiple overdoses at certain locations. The thought to bring everybody together is to enforce the issues under one ordinance. Again, this ordinance came about for the health and safety and welfare of the residents. Some expectations are to implement a task force. I asked Mr. Murphy to get together a task force of 4 members. 1 from the health department, 1 from the building department, 1 from the fire department, 1 from the police department. Mr. Murphy would be basically the head of the task force, oversee it, see how it's going. If Mr. Murphy happens to leave or somebody takes over for Mr. Murphy, that next safety service director will be in charge of this task force. So this task force includes everything from building code to police runs to health code violations to building code violations. What I look for is at least these 4 people to go out, maybe at least once weekly together as a unit and hit some chronic properties that we know are an absolute issue. Start hitting them with this nuisance ordinance. I guess Mr. Murphy has put the police department in charge essentially of this. However, here's my thought on that. I think the police department will send the letters out or post them on the doors of the properties for the owners. However, I am expecting a file folder on a shared server with the city so that all the departments can get into that file folder. The fire department, the police department, the health department, building department can all get into that one folder with the spreadsheet, which is in that packet, like this, so that the properties can be added to that spreadsheet each time a violation occurs at that property. The goal with this ordinance is to hold property owners accountable for keeping the properties in good shape, keeping the properties and neighbors safe, and creating a more desirable community. We had assistance from public input, administration input, and council input. This is an all-inclusive ordinance, meaning it encompasses single-family, multifamily, and commercial properties. All right. So my expectations are basically, in a nutshell, I'm hoping that we can get the task force together at least once a week, go out and hit the properties in one day, hit some chronic properties in a day. You may not get to 10 properties in a day, and you may get to 10 properties in a day. But I want to see at least one day a week of the 5 members going out and looking at these properties and saying, okay, there's a building code violation, there's a health code violation. Police department looking at their numbers and saying, okay, we've had 3 runs here since this ordinance has been enacted, and they fall into these categories. Mark them all down on the spreadsheet. I don't expect the police department to go in and take the building department's code, the health department, and stick those codes in on their own. I expect each department to do their own. We're all big people here. We're all adults. We can do it on our own. It's not too hard to go in and throw an address in there and what violation number it was under this ordinance. Does anybody have any questions? I know most of you have a lot of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. I guess by starting, for the citizens that don't know this group existed before. It's called COPS. Sergeant Dave Lewis is here. He was the genesis behind it, got it going by the police department. The safety director had nothing to do with it. He got it going, and he is here tonight. He will speak on how he did that. The department heads are here so they can speak on their input into what they can do for this, what they can provide for this, what computer, who. I believe you spoke to Chief Kramer about changing from PAMX to Peel 9 for our record management system. If we can't get the data out because it doesn't accept it, then it's up to the individual officer, which would take training on the chief's behalf, to his supervisors to say, this is what we want you to come back and flag as you make the run there. This will be easy with 12-hour shifts. Same way with Mr. Williamson and the health department. In the middle of what they're doing, yes, there was a person who's now retired that has vast experience in this. He has new people that would have to learn this. The building department has, as you should know, a head, Dan Bly, who is not, he's like an appointed, but he's not there. He's out approving plans and things. Mark Reeves is not the manager. We don't have one. So they then can do their part with proper timing and training. Same way with the police department. If we can't get the data in, if we have to rely on the people to do it, then we have to do that. So at this point, this is doable. But you have to also understand it fell apart because of a couple of lawsuits committed by a person who's no longer here that made a mistake in addressing a group of people, and it got him sued in federal court. So we're going to have Mr. Geary, who I've already spoke to give us some guidelines so you get these people together, the same mistake is not made again.
And you're correct. That's why we came up with an ordinance this time. I don't believe that the last program, the COPS ordinance program, went in this deep with an actual ordinance to include certain things.
They used the existing city ordinances.
Yeah. Correct. They used a bunch of ordinances.
And it was working now.
This has one ordinance with all those ordinances put into it. So
it wasn't so much the ordinance, it's what somebody said that should not have been said on a sensitive issue at a time which got a federal lawsuit filed.
Okay.
So that's the stuff with Mr. Geary's understanding. How far can you go? What should you really be doing?
So what you're saying, to me, this is what I'm gathering, I just kind of want to clarify, is what you're saying is it's doable. I mean, we did this, you're not just saying, well, we didn't put all these ordinances into one, that, you agree with that, but what you're
It's
saying
doable.
is whoever's on it needs to be careful that they're doing it properly.
It's just like anything else, search and seizure, any of the,
Yeah.
laws which guide us, people have to understand, and this person, I don't know, he's no longer here, he's a building official, really stepped in it, because maybe nobody told him what he should be saying in this situation, and it came crashing down. Now, Sergeant Lewis is here. I would like him, and he can give you an overview of what he started.
Yeah.
He wrote the manual. This was back in 10, was it 10, David?
2009.
2009, so it's been some time. This thing went to kaput. I did try to get it started. Of course, we've had COVID issues. We've had labor talk issues. This was not the first top thing on anybody's specific list, because we have a bunch of new young cops that don't know anything about this. David is now in a different assignment, so he can't lead it. So we need a new leader. That would be up to Chief Kramer,
Well,
Chief McCabe, to appoint somebody that really wants to do this.
I have a quick question on
Yes,
this.
sir.
Or just a statement in general. So, I mean, specifically, I just want to clarify a few things. The chronic nuisance ordinance, it doesn't put all the other stuff into one. I mean, it's just an extra ordinance, but everybody still has to get cited under the existing, so basically to get to all of these different, I guess strikes, if you will, to hit the thresholds, they've got to get cited under the existing ones. This just allows them to, once they have gotten so many of those strikes, right, for us to reach out. I mean, to me, to see this, to make this thing effective, and I think this task force would be effective, whether it's I think it's great, but we really are going to need a tracking system in the city that adds up the strikes, basically, that like we need to know, so it takes the health department violations, the building department, whatever, all the things that kind of go into chronic nuisance, it adds them up, because there's two components to this. One of them is a warning letter, and we need to know. Now, I got you. I mean, you have the spread, but I would say we need something more than just the spread, like just a.
I think we're talking about like something like where they get a ding to that property and something goes in and it automatically does it rather than somebody coming in and manually doing it.
Well, yeah, basically, like, I mean, we're not going to be able to track it like on a handwritten spreadsheet. Like, it's going to.
I'm not saying a handwritten, it's.
I mean, I think it's, I mean, maybe it's something digital, but.
We absolutely can. If we have somebody go in and just put, you don't have to put every single address in here all at once. But as you go through, let's say 1938 Portland. Okay? Now you put your violation, your code, your violation description, and your warning letter date. Now, all you have to do is you hit down, and instead of going down to the next box, if you've got another violation for that property, you hit the Alt return button, and it drops it down in that same box.
I mean, and that's fine. I guess whatever the best system is, I mean, I just see how great it is with See-Click Fix, with Public Works, how they're able to track stuff, and I see some basically, like, if I were to like envision this in my head, I would want the city to try to keep doing what they can, the task force, in a parallel front, but like as soon as these things start getting to the point that they hit the number of strikes to get the warning letter or whatever, I mean, somebody prints out a report every week that says that, and they send the letters then. I mean, It's going to be really hard for us. I think it's going to be hard for the city.
Looks like it's already been started.
Yeah. So for 2010, that's what they did then, and it was working. If you notice, I only have one copy, pardon me for that. Most of them were building department violations. I'm not saying that there weren't health department, because you had a whole different crew there, and obviously the buy-in from each department needs to be there on their own. Hey, I see this. Dale Marshall was great at it. Dale's retired.
Well, this is absolutely fantastic. This is a lot better than what I came up with. But I was going to say that mine could be amended and adjusted.
Yeah, I mean,
this is absolutely good.
All the goal of the administration is to get all these new players together so they understand the mission of this committee, what the committee's solving, and everybody starts off at the same step. And then once that's done, it will pick up. You have to have a buy-in. It's from the beat officers, obviously. They're going to see a lot. Brian's folks, when they're out, they're going to see things. They have to teach, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's the goal. And then this information will trickle in. So if you don't mind, Dave, I just want Dave to give you, Sergeant Lewis, to give you a brief overview of, this is his inception. He can steer us in the right way to get this started back up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I did that spreadsheet back in 2010. The COPS program was created, I had a vision of teaching police officers that there should be multifaceted ways to approach a situation. That the police are never going to arrest their way out of a problem. There's been so many times, and even recently, where we have done search warrants of arrested people. They're out on bond, they're coming back to the exact same location because that's where they live, this is the area they know. So I envisioned this program of taking a multifaceted approach. The health department, the fire department, the building department was all on board. The thing about running a task force in general is you need to have clear-cut objectives and achievable goals. And with that said, when you're bringing different departments together, each department kind of has their own expertise. You know, the building department knows a lot of things that the police department doesn't know, and the fire department knows things as far as structural and nuisance weeds. The health department addresses that issue. The problem is you go out and you do the inspections, and we would add it to this Excel sheet that I made and wrote. And I even had it color-coded. You know, the open cases were green, the in-progress cases were yellow, and the closed cases were red. The issue is when you have all these departments coming together, you do these inspections, and then you go back to your normal everyday duties that you have to do, and the follow-up is where things get lost in the shuffle. The follow-up meaning, as a police sergeant, you can't really go to the building department and say, hey, you need to really follow up on this and get things done. Because it's, in all fairness, you don't know what they do on an everyday basis. The same with the fire department, the same with the health department. You don't know what they do on a daily basis, that their time has gotten away from them and this follow-up wasn't conducted. So in order for this task force to be successful, it definitely needs to have clear-cut goals. It definitely needs to have a clear-cut leader, somebody that can ensure that the follow-up is being done, somebody that can ensure that the orders that were written are completed and that it goes through the court process. Now, we kind of shoehorned everything into the disorderly house ordinance, and I believe the ordinance is 52907 if I'm not mistaken. So what we would do is we would send out daily emails to the police officers like, hey, if you guys are experiencing a number of runs at a location and there's issues, let us know. And then what we would do is we would either Chief Kramer would sign a letter and it would be sent certified mail, or if the problem was such a nuisance, we would drive a police cruiser to the owner's residence and hand deliver that letter. So by hand delivering the letter, you're making the owner aware of the issue and that if it's not addressed, any further runs would result in a citation and an appearance in mayor's court. So that part of the COPS program was very successful. It got a lot of landlords' attention. It got a lot of results. When you go to somebody's house that doesn't live in Norwood but owns a house in Norwood and is renting, and you say, hey, here's your letter, you are now aware of the problems that are going on at your house. What I try to do is I tell these landlords, we want to work with you in every way to make your business successful because we have the same goals. We want you to increase the equity, overall equity in your property, and we want you to get long-term good tenants that are going to make you money instead of revolving doors and you having to come in and fix holes in a wall or whatever issues that these, you know, devious people do in these rental properties. So moving on upon that, I did a lot of research. I reached out to a couple communities back in 2011, Farmers Branch, Texas, East Lansing, Michigan, and Athens, Ohio. I had personal communications with their city managers, with their health department managers, their building department manager. Everybody in these three communities took a really different approach. But the common approach that they all took was that operating a rental property is the same as operating a for-profit business. That if you were a owner of a McDonald's franchise, there's no way that you would not know what's going on at that McDonald's for 3 or 4 months, because your livelihood and your income depends on that McDonald's. So therefore, if there's an issue at that McDonald's, the owner of that franchise is going to go there and determine the issue and fix it. Well, what these communities did is they enacted legislation to shoehorn rental properties into business licenses. That's not a popular idea. It's almost like another tax. We had something similar at one point, and it was a rental certification. And it somehow went away. I believe there might have been some court challenges to the rental certificate problem. And I know Mr. Bonzo was on council at that point, so you might know exactly what happened to it. But I was just told that it was challenged in court and it went away. So with that said, you lose a lot of ability to hold some of these absentee landlords accountable, because there's no really registration to go there and say, hey, I'm going to operate a 4-family rental at this location, and here is my phone number, my address, so a lot of what these absentee landlords were doing after the rental certification process was done away with is you would look up a property, or you would call the building department to get information, and lo and behold, it was a P.O. box. So you would have an owner in a P.O. box and really no certain way to get a hold of this owner. So I think that there are other avenues, as well as trying to create some sort of ordinance to put all these things together. But I think that there's other avenues to look at or to explore to make this issue a little more manageable. So the reason why I think the issue really needs to be manageable is because in 2011, and I talked to Joe Jones of the fire department, and he said these numbers hasn't changed, but this is research from 2011. We had, the city of Norwood had 1,092 single-family rental units. They had 703 two-family rental units, 459 3 to 6 family rental units, and 107 7 or more family units. Now, since this research that I did, there's been the addition of Carpenter Flats, 1 Rookwood, and University Station. That puts us somewhere around 4,000 individual units for rent within the city of Norwood, which is a lot compared to our geographical size. So, I mean, there are a lot of rental properties still remaining in Norwood. So that's why I believe that the issue needs to be managed, and it needs to be managed in some way. But again, it's a multifaceted issue that not just one department can really take care of. Again, the police aren't going to arrest their way out of a situation. A building department is not going to be legally able to go somewhere and say, hey, you're taking those down, or we're going to take it down for you. We have to do things within the scope of the law. And as Ms. Murphy said, there was a lawsuit. I was there. Unfortunately, I was part of it. And it had to do with one of the issues that Mr. Geraci was referring to when he was watching the house that he talked about in the beginning of the meeting here. So it was an overcrowding issue. So there is an ordinance. And I believe, was enforceable by the building and health department, the overcrowding issue. However, there's also thoughts and ideas that this is my friend, and if he wants to stay a week, he can stay a week. This is my friend, and if he wants to stay a month, he can stay a month. And it goes the same along the lines of any other issues or halfway houses or any other personally owned property. You can have a party at your house, and if it's not getting too much out of hand and that neighbors aren't calling the police, there's not a whole lot that you can do to say, hey, break this party up. Because we typically would have to have a complaint about that. But the COPS program was very successful. It really was based upon the fact that I wanted to see people take a different approach to dealing with the problems. And it fell along the lines of the broken windows theory. Once people in some neighborhoods really started repairing their properties, it was contagious, and other people started, and it carried on down the line. So I think we're on the right path. I just, when you're bringing together different organizations and different expertise, it's just really hard for these individuals from these departments to know exactly what everybody else is doing. You know, if somebody comes to you and like, hey, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? We don't know what they're doing. We don't know how their time is spent.
Correct, and that's why we're trying to. Well, that's why we're having this discussion, because, like you said, there has to be a head. There has to be somebody in charge, because police department can't go to the fire department and say, go recheck this. Fire department can't go to the health department and say, go recheck this. That's our safety service director's position. That's why I said there was 5. Our safety service director is supposed to be looking at that scope and saying, okay, this property hasn't been checked in 60 days. We need to go back out and take a look at it. And shooting that email over to that department saying, hey, this, you know, you cited under the chronic nuisance ordinance. We need to go check that property because it's been 60 days. That should be what the safety service director or his secretary could be doing. I'm only looking at the police department as far as sending out the letters, certified mail, things like that, and then coming back with, I don't know, maybe there's drug abuse going on that wasn't cited, or a fight at a party that wasn't cited, or something that the officers aren't citing for at the time, but fall under this chronic nuisance that can go back and say, okay, we're going to flag this. Whoever's in charge of, you know, maybe it's an auxiliary. Throw an auxiliary a bone and let them run the spreadsheet or whatever on the police department side. Flag that property. Hey, this is what we had. Kind of concerned. Shoot an email, something real easy, you know.
So I don't know the administrative code off the top of my head. I'm very familiar with it. I was in a 9-day trial over it. The state has really, really strict laws when it comes to nuisance properties and when it comes to specifically drugs. It doesn't necessarily address drug use, but the ordinance, I believe, reads something in the effect that any violation of 292503, which is trafficking in drugs, you can declare that property a nuisance. Mm-hmm. So we use that on a property here in West Norwood, and we use it on a property in South Norwood, and it was very effective.
When was that? Was that recently, or you mean like way back in 2009?
2015.
Okay.
So 6 years.
So
I don't know, I'm giving up my age, so
if I
it's kind of recent to me.
If I could just chime in for a minute, I just want to, has anybody got, that's involved or going to be involved in this, had a chance to actually read this? Because to me, it's really clear, like the goals, all that's pretty clear, right? Nuisance properties that we get a bunch of service calls to. Nuisance activities, whether it be high grass, junk cars, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff here for the police department. You know, when they meet at this task force meeting, I mean, they're going to bring their shared files in, say, hey, these are our hot properties. You know, the shared system that he's talking about, well, they'll be uploading their stuff to it, and everybody can have a look at it. And then when they go meet as a task force, it's like, hey, these are the properties that we've been hitting. These are the properties we've been hitting. That's when people are communicating. That's where the communication comes in. And it's clear here on the 3rd page, there's 11 items that we look at that we are including in this ordinance. And Mr. Bonds, I want to correct myself. He's right. This doesn't bring all the ordinances together. It does so in the sense that it references all of them into this one, because what this ordinance does that the COPS program didn't do and couldn't do, the follow through, the incentive, rather than arresting them out of it or whatever, like you were referencing, it allows us to fine them, civil punishment. And if they don't pay that fine, we can assess that on their property taxes. They don't pay that, we own some more property that we can auction and we can recoup. It allows us to do other things of that nature that we had not had in the past with any ordinance, That is our teeth. That's our ammunition. They get that letter. Hey, halfway through, and that's on page,
And real quick, Chris.
well, hold on, page 2 describes under C, chronic nuisances, 1 through 5, it gives you the number of units, and this isn't about just rental properties here. This is all properties, this is commercial properties. This is the whole kit caboodle here that we're covering in this. That's on page 2. It tells you how many they can get in a 6-month time. Where is it? Page, where it talks about the nuisance letter, is if you reference page 2, where it tells you how many dings they get, I like to call it, in a 6-month time. There's a section that goes on to talk about when they get their warning letter. Here it is. Sorry, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Page 4, warning of possible nuisance finding. It goes in and it kind of describes, so I'll use single-family property, for instance. 4 or more calls for one of these 11 items that we are considering a nuisance activity in 6 months, you're a nuisance property. That 5th time, you're getting fined. That 6th time, guess what? It's a higher fine. Stair-stepping system up to $3,000 for each additional fine after that. I mean, we put that together. That seems pretty good. Halfway through that 4 calls in 6 months, after that second, you get sent a letter that says, hey, bud, you're about to be a nuisance property. We're just letting you know. After that 4th one, you get a letter that says, hey, you're now a nuisance property. The next call is this, and it gives you a fine structure. I mean, these are things in here that's our teeth. That's our hammer for the nail. I mean, all we need to do is have a nice group of people that work in these departments that deal with this to get together. If somebody wants to say, hey, you're the leader of this, that's fine with me. I don't want to have to do that. If we have to be expected to appoint people and say, hey, that's not what we want to do. I don't want to do that. None of you guys work for me. Shit. And we work for the people. But what we're saying is we want a group of people that are going to meet from these departments, that are going to track this, that want the same thing we want for the city out of this, which is the lack of nuisance properties, the lack of bonehead, knucklehead nuisance activity. And if they do so, they get hit. And then after a certain period, they get warned. We're working with them. After a certain period longer, now they get fined. You know, that's the essence of this thing. It's clear in here what it covers from the building department, from the health department, from the police department, even the fire department as far as that they can go. I mean, we just need you guys to get together, talk. There's going to be some stuff that you guys are going to have to figure out what works best. And you seem, even though you can't lead or be on that, you seem like somebody that should definitely be at some of these task force meetings early on to at least say, hey guys, this is, because what you have and what you're talking about really is awesome. And it's the same, kind of the same way, but a different maybe lane kind of deal, but that's the energy we want. That's kind of what we want to do. But there's just different things that drive it further, that follow-up, as it were. I mean, there's going to be follow-up. As long as these people send out the warning letters, and then they send out the, hey, you're now nuisance property, here's your fine structure letter, this state will have no problem enforcing this thing. And when it comes to assessing on the property taxes, I mean, the Hamilton County Auditor's page lists who owns the property and where to send mail to if there's a problem. So I don't think that's an issue either.
And to answer James's question about him saying, well, the building department's going to have to issue their 5 citations and then place it under this. No, the health department can sit there and go out and let's say they go out for an abandoned refrigerator.
Yeah.
They can cite the abandoned refrigerator instead of under that ordinance, under 567, .09.
Yeah. Well, and also too is the way it's working here is, and that's why we have this task force, different departments, is they can communicate. Mr. Ribble says, hey man, this guy's got these busted up stairs. Let's use that because that's fresh on the mind. This guy's got these busted up stairs. We sent him a letter. He's not getting them done. Now we got to cite him. The gentleman here from the health department says, hey, this guy's got tall grass. That's a harmful thing because rats and that. We've cited him as a little sticker that goes on door. He hasn't followed through with it. We had to cite him. There's 2 right there. And then one of the police department guys says, hey, man, there are people fighting out front of there all the time, being, disruptive and all that. But there's your third. It's not just one department, it's all departments. And when you're talking at this task force meeting, hey, 28, 25, Cleveland, man, oh yeah, you got problems. Here's what we got from there too. Boom. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and that's exactly how the cops program worked. And we did.
That's what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah.
And we did the team inspections. From the police perspective, we were just there.
Yeah.
In essence, we were there. They would go in. They would do an inspection if they found. If one of the building department guys saw drug paraphernalia in plain view, they would tell the police to come in. At that point, we would have the right to go in and cite. If they saw an unlicensed vehicle, at that point, they could say, hey, there's a car back here, can you check it? And that's where the police came in during those inspections. But I can tell you, when you have all the departments together conducting the inspection, it carries a little more clout than a lot of people, going out and doing individual inspections. But it did
that's
work.
what we're hoping for.
Right.
That's what we're hoping, is to get these departments together as one and go out and get that clout going. Hey, now we found 4 violations.
Yeah.
And we did it once a month. So once a month, that gave plenty of time to come back to the next month, and we would start each meeting like, hey, what happened here, what happened there? So a lot of times the follow-up was, yeah, we cited them to court, we're just waiting for the court decision to come back, or we did this and we're waiting for it to happen. So it was a great program. It can be a great program again. You saw the spreadsheet. I still have it. I would relinquish it to anybody that would want to use it. It's fairly simple and it's easy to follow. It would be easy for anybody to follow.
Yeah.
And again, I think we're on the right direction. I think we're taking the right path. And the dynamics of the city are changing. This place is. It's wonderful. To see the Renaissance is taking a hold of the city is amazing. To see the houses that are being rehabbed. So hopefully in the future we won't need something like that.
And I think the biggest thing with this is that we actually sat down and we worked with single-family residents. We worked with landlords. We listened to their complaints. We adjusted it to fit their needs, and we adjusted it to fit our needs. And I think we worked as a community together on this to make sure that everybody was happy with it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we can get it up and going here soon so we can make the city better.
Right, and everybody, again, the most important thing is everybody involved, including the property owners, need to know that we have the same goal.
Yeah.
We might have different ways of getting to that goal, but we have the same goal. We want to see their property values increase. We want to see them get long-term tenants. And that's what we, as a city, want to see as employees. It makes life easier for everyone.
Yeah. We're creating a standard quality of life for all, and let's uphold that or pay the price.
Ultimately, though, I just think we should remember that this is really not the creation of this task force. It's really an administrative decision, and to make sure it actually happens and works is going to be the city administration doing it. So essentially, I've heard that, I just think we should remember that ultimately is who enforces the laws. It's not necessarily council. So, do we have commitment? Does this sound like something, I don't know if, Mr. Murphy, if you could speak on this, but is this something that's a priority for you that you're going to work to help make happen as well? Because ultimately it's your direction that's going to cause this to happen or not happen.
If I may, in closing, there is a new direction. As David said, this is a new city. It's changing. We have a new ordinance. It will be led by my department and my admins. And I asked the department heads to be here tonight so they could hear this from this group. So they understand what your goals are, but they'll also understand that this would be like us assembling a sports team. Okay, your tackle, your left in, whatever. They have to understand, okay, how are we going to do this? It will get done, but it's not going to be quick till we sit and meet as department heads and say, okay, who is my best person to help you and how much, as I mentioned, the fire inspector. One is retiring, that leaves them one until we get a test.
And I
So,
agree, and you
we'll
know,
get there.
I'm disappointed that it's 7 months and we're just now getting to the spot of, well, I might get to it, I might not get to it.
Well, so I mean, I would not get, I would just say I would not be just disappointed in that. I mean, I would, you know, of course, we all want it to move faster. Mr. Murphy has said that there's been a lot of other competing priorities. I would say that during the 7 months, we've had violations that have accumulated, I'm sure, on properties. So the thing now is to bring it all together
Right.
and then to, you know, really make sure we're watching those problem properties, which is what the task force will do.
Right, and
But-
those violations have been cited. We've got a number in court right now that we've been dealing with, and they're quite difficult cases.
Oh, and I've heard a few of them, and I can't even imagine, I mean, the law department, I don't know how they don't pull their heads out, their hair out.
We're going in a new direction,
Yeah.
but it's going to take time. Even if this is 7 months ago, with COVID and not meeting and all the other things we've had going on, it will get done. But we have a tool to use, but in the meantime, until we get these spreadsheets and get the beat officers to report to the police chief, and we find a vehicle to get record management to help us, then it's going to be slow, though.
Yeah, so I just would, I mean, on that point, I mean, I just want to encourage you, you know, as the city administrator, basically, I mean, potentially to look into, I mean, see if there's some software out there like C-Click-Fix, right? But like for code enforcement that the health department, the health inspectors can use, the building department can use, and that potentially even the fire inspectors can
Right.
use. And I know, I think the fire department actually has something because I've
Right,
seen
they're-
some pretty well formatted stuff from them. But I mean, I would just really strongly recommend that because I think is not only is going to help you all to track some of this stuff, I think it's just going to allow better tracking for the city overall when it comes to
I agree.
these type of
We've been
matters.
looking at some building department software which they need, which streamlines what they do.
Right, as long as, but again, I just want to make sure, like, I mean, if you look at it, I would just make sure it fits the health needs too. I mean, I'd really, one unified system for all of these kind of inspections, and it'd be great if it would integrate with PAMET, right, too, or I think it's the software PAMET, so that we can pull in some of the specific ones from that too, but.
Any help anybody can send as far as programs, talk to T.A. Brown, I'm sure he has some knowledge. I have 2 part-time admins, and between the 2 of them, they're quite talented and can work this. Now that we have a recreation director, that part of that will come out of my office back to the recreation. So we'll have time to do it, but we're going to have to get field input. If we can't get it from the RMS system, then we have to rely on the beat officers. Mike Roble and Larry Brinkmeyer know what their issues are, and I'm sure Brian and his department know what their issues are. It's just a matter of the funnel we put them in and how we get it out where everybody understands.
Well, again, I like what he had created right here.
Yeah.
This is exactly what should be created for this task force and what I envisioned. And
If the chief allows David to work on that, or anybody else for that
well, it doesn't
matter.
have to be him.
Well, but-
he said he would allow people
Well, I
to
agree,
utilize
but it
this.
still
okay?
has to, the chief will say, okay, this is what I want you to.
I understand that. You're
I think y'all are all both saying the same thing. I don't think you really need to, it sounds like the safety service director is aligned with the vision. And I think we just now need to let the city administration kind of come up with this and.
We'll work on it, and then we'll get
because
it.
back in December, I started asking the mayor for updates on this chronic nuisance and how many properties we were hitting, and it's now April without any update because we haven't been able to keep track or nobody's been doing anything.
They were doing things, they were not doing things under this ordinance.
You're absolutely correct.
But that,
But again,
I think we should be
7
respectful.
months.
I think
But
we should
it seems like
respect
we
all
are
of our
going to now, even though it's a little later than we liked, and trust me, I was a little upset last time with the lack of everybody being here. But it seems to me now that it seems like the administration's behind it. I would like to hope to think that the departments are behind it. Let's find the way that takes us forward in the most streamlined, efficient way.
thank you. Chief Kramer has,
Just a real quick question, and if it's in here, I apologize if I didn't see it. When we talk about like one felony drug offense or other nuisance citations, is that upon conviction?
No.
Just when, so
Call for
it could be innocent?
It could be a call for service, it could be, you don't have to cite somebody for fighting, you don't have to cite somebody for, I mean, if you arrest obviously for a felony, it doesn't, I mean, we don't have in there that they have to be convicted.
Well, I guess the law director's not here yet. Have you talked to him about that? Because I know.
We discussed it, yeah.
So I would,
That was
I think
one,
he,
yeah, that was one of our
I
main
might be,
things. Yes.
maybe I misunderstood him, but I think he's of a different opinion.
Hey, we sat down with
As
him and
far
discussed
as,
it.
like, because I talked about a particular, so I actually looked at using this ordinance on a problem business that we had. and-
Well, I would offer this, and it's not meant to be disrespectful, and it's not towards you, that if he's confused by this, because he went through this tooth and comb, like,
Well, like I said, I could be the one
this one
that,
right here, that we have copies of are his red line notes.
Right.
So he went through this tooth and nail, and it's defined in here that the definitions, a call for service, it's a chapter that's called to the residence or building that could involve a citation, arrest, or warning. And that's what we use for our references on what is a nuisance property, nuisance activities. Under that 1 through 11 thing, the call for service is what we use to describe what happens. Like, you got a call for service for commission of a drug offense.
So, I mean,
Whether you
if
charge or
property
not,
owner was to
call
come
for
into the
service.
appeals board and utilize that and say, well, you know, there was no conviction in this, so, you know, obviously there wasn't any proof of it. You know, the appeals board can literally take that in consideration and go, okay, we're going to remove that from there, and now you're at this number. So this can be cited. There's no criminal in this. This is all civil penalties. So it can be cited under this as even if there's not a conviction, and they can appeal that with the appeals board. I'm sure with the appeals board, they'll look at it and they'll go, okay, if there's no conviction, we'll pull that off there. We'll take it off your
In
record.
some cases, I'm sure,
Fantastic.
maybe, I don't know.
yeah, I mean,
All right, like I said,
obviously, you've got to operate in the confines of the law, basically with feedback from the law department and city administration. So, I mean, if there is something wrong with the ordinance that needs to be changed, I mean, definitely, somebody should let us know. But
right, well, I doubt that the law department is confused, and then it's probably likely me, but I know that I've contacted them about a particular problem property we've had with a number of runs, and talked to them about using this, and they prefer that we just cite for each individual one and get those citations. That's what they told me, get those citations first. So,
which is, I think that makes sense. I mean, at least that
I
doesn't
think
hurt
that's,
this.
it sometimes is a problem too, is we do make a lot of runs without citations or without arrests, because by the time we get there, the problem is done and over. We don't have anybody that wants to do anything. So, you know, and that's what happens a lot.
And that's-
So, I mean, if you can use this for simply being a call for service, it would be beneficial, but at the same time, I don't know that that's fair if you don't have anything to.
Well, it would only be a call for service on any one of those 11 things, which are not all like things you would get called for, like police would get called for. You're not getting called for tall grass. You know what I mean?
Say that again, I didn't.
I mean, like, not all of it is stuff you would, like, the police department would call for.
Right.
Like tall grass, junk cars, like stuff like that. I mean, there's a handful of things that are pretty severe things that are, by anyone's definition of the word, nuisance activities, and we defined it as such in here. So
Right.
there's only those, like, certain things. There's 11 things that you're going to, that we're looking at.
Right.
11 items, that's it.
And I'm just looking at you guys for the police side, and every department's their own. That's what I'm hoping for, but I want everybody to come together into one area, so that kind of the way Mr. Lewis had.
Right.
And with our safety service director basically going, okay, we're 60 days behind on this property, or we're 30 days behind, let's go check it again. You know, I don't expect you to send out an email to anybody else saying, hey, guys, let's get on top of it.
Right.
I don't want to put a whole lot on you and your department,
Yeah, I
because I know in the past that has been done.
Right. Okay, that's it. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Anything else?
I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, though.
Anybody
Good
else have
conversation.
anything? Nope. Good. All right, I will go ahead and close this meeting of the Housing, Health, and Public Safety Committee. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.